Good afternoon. So it's been a while since I did a stream. I think I said in my last one I was sick last week, and then I managed to, I think, cough my way through the last stream and was a bit spaced out. So I might also cough my way through this stream as well because I'm still essentially recovering. But yeah, so apologies in advance if you get a bout of coughing and if I kind of go offline briefly while I recover myself. But I'll try and do this quickly anyway because I just want to get through the T's and the U's on the watch list, and there's not that many of them, and there's also very little to say on Bitcoin and Ether over what I've said previously. So we've got quite a lot of news this week. I know there's FOMC and the Fed funds rate, I think, on Wednesday. There's some Bank of Japan news which might cause some havoc in the markets. And I'd have to check what else, but I think there was something every day, but it might not necessarily all of them are going to affect what's going on in the crypto land. But yeah, so just quickly again on Tradfi, because we're kind of heavily influenced by that at the moment. I was looking for the dollar to bounce in this area and it's still really struggling to do so, but it is Monday, so it could be just going for a stop hunt before later reversing, particularly because we have FOMC later. My other concern with this anyway was that while I have pound and euro in sort of decent zones that I'd be looking for a pullback, at least a pullback if not a reversal, I never had Aussie and New Zealand in those zones, and Aussie and New Zealand have taken off New Zealand quite a lot today, and Aussies now sort of seem to be catching up a little bit. So maybe we're going to still need to wait for Aussie, maybe even just take out this high or to get into the next zone above, and I think New Zealand's almost there. Let me check. Yeah, so New Zealand's almost hitting a weekly zone, 2 weekly zone up here now, and we've got Euro New Zealand finally breaking down. I did have an alert for a long there today, which has failed, or is at least going to get stop hunted at least. Yeah, so maybe it just needed some time, or it still needed some time. So we've still got it's the Euro's just going sideways today, and there are a couple of zones or levels above that could get stop hunted still. And pounds pushed a little bit more, so I'll see what happens in the next couple of days on that, but yeah, still waiting for the potential dollar reversal. On the indices, so we had a whole week of sideways last week, at least on the US indices. I think on most of them, but today now we're finally seemingly getting a little bit of movement. We have made some demand. The demand does seem to be holding so far. But again, it's still Monday and we still haven't really broken. We're coming at the top of the local range in the case of NASDAQ and S&P, but we haven't really broken any significant supply yet. And recall I have said, these are on major zones, so while we keep ticking down deeper in the zone to other zones within zones, we have, I think, at least on S&P, broken weekly structure. I think maybe all of them have a weekly or 2 weekly, 3 weekly supply. Which may or may not be monthly, depending on the close in the next, what have we got, 10 days or so, or actually 2 weeks. But yeah, so we just need to see what kind of bounce we're going to get, and are we going to get a lower high on these, or are these, just consolidating in major zones for the next up move? So yeah, we had a significant drop and didn't really, or gave some lower time frame re-entry. So let's look at S&P quickly. I did get, I think, one re-entry on a daily up there, but then I was hoping we'd get a decent test of this weekly once it got created, and then since then it's really just rejected either daily or 12-hour, 8-hour supplies. So it's been a bit challenging to get in unless you chart it and watching on the lower time frames, you're trading it regularly. But yeah, so I just want to see what reaction we get as and when we get up back to this zone on S&P. And so, as I said, yeah, we've broken kind of weekly structure, but also from a wave perspective, I still don't really see this as a significant breakdown. Like if I look at the high time frame, like this is all, okay, these are smaller waves within waves, it's all chop, and yes, we have broken down that local structure, but the bigger structure of this, still needs quite a lot, that can still very easily happen. And okay, yes, we get towards the 5K mark in between, but that doesn't mean, we're in a sort of multi-year recession now or anything like that. We still need to see some monthly supply made, monthly supply rejected, etc. And this could make a monthly supply, but again, we've still got too long to go to really, it can fill that gap in a day if it wanted to. So I guess we'll see. But Bitcoin is following this, so I guess even just the local up move is promising for that, although Bitcoin isn't following very much today. We've just been messing around sideways, and hasn't. So we've got a CME gap that's slightly above from this weekend, and then we've still got one that's quite a lot higher from, or not a lot higher, but a bit higher, $1,000 or so higher from the previous week. And, you know, but again, just very much in a sort of sideways range with a week of sideways like the indices. In its favour, I guess we did create 2-day demand on the US dollar pair and the Korea pair, and we did create a 2-day supply on the US dollar dominance chart. So, but again, so far hasn't given a very significant bounce off this, but it is holding a support despite all the messing around that we've been getting and wicking around. We've been getting low time frame today. And yeah, again, still needs significant time. You know, okay, yes, we've got this 2-day supply on US dollar dominance, but we've got a 5-day demand immediately below and various other demands, which I've spoken about previously, and I won't go into detail now, but make it challenging to know, you know, where this might retrace to, and or if we're going to get the bigger drop, because the whole thing is still in 2 months supply. So yeah, I'm just, again, as always, trading the zones as and when they're hit, and etc. Lower time frame, I haven't added anything, so just show the Bitcoin chart on the lower time frame. I haven't added any entries. I've been focused on alts. So you know, we had that potential bounce on the question mark level that I've had for a while at the 12-hour demand at the low, and I haven't added anything new. I was considering zones in here, but still a bit skeptical, particularly being still under this supply. So I wanted to see the reaction we get off this supply if we ever make it up there. We broke this sort of local dubious trend line, but again, it hasn't really, you know, it came up and wicked up at the weekend, but it's just messing around, and because it's too early in the week, I don't really want to make a judgment until it actually makes a move, significant move, either up or down. And then we'll see, but obviously you can scalp this on the low time frames if you want, but it's just messy. Still, I haven't changed anything again from the last stream. I'm still looking potentially up here, 8-hour supply inside this, I think 4 or 5 day supply, if we make it up there. And again, possibly we'll get a higher low in here. You can look around, yeah, the 78 to 80 area golden fib zone, but again, preferably would like the price to hit somewhere below 72. The only difficulty with that is everybody's waiting for that, so it concerns me when everybody's waiting for a particular zone or price level. Then I suspect, at a minimum, I expect the first bounce to get stop hunted, and either that or we never make it there. You know, price just continues higher from where we are now, and that was the point of the question mark level in case we front run this. Or thirdly, you know, the other option is that we just go straight through it. But I would expect probably the amount of people that want to long here, I would expect to bounce on the top of it. We do have quite big walls at 75k, so maybe we won't get down, maybe we take out this low, but we don't get down all the way to the 3-month, or at least in the short term. So keep an eye on 75k level. Because yeah, I think both Coinbase and Binance have decent walls there. And yeah, just be conscious if we come down into this 72 area, it might get a decent bounce, but it's fairly likely to come back and take out the lows. I also have just been keeping an eye on the ETFs, and so as of last week, just open that quickly. As of last week, you know, we were still getting selling, but significantly less than previous weeks. And then Wednesday, Friday, we got a little bit of net buying because ARK moved in with some buying. Excuse me. And I think the same has happened today, actually. So I was looking, and again, I've commented this before, like this is transfers, so it doesn't necessarily mean buying. But let's scroll down. So you can see there's a lot of ARK throughout all here, but it's hard to know. I mean, a lot of these are, so you can see it's ARK to ARK. So it appears here that they bought 500 and then sold 500 and bought 500, but I think that's just transferring it around. But overall, that's a buy of a 500. And then I've got another one here where there's what appears to be a buy of 494, and then a sell, and then another buy. But I think, again, those last two are just transfers. So ARK seems to be stepping in now, but we still do have BlackRock were very heavily selling this morning. So whether what ARK's doing is going to be enough, I don't know, but maybe that explains why price is sort of wicking around up and down, and not making any consistent supply or demand at the moment. It's just messing around in the area. So yeah, I'll just see a bit more what happens on that before making any further judgments. And like I say, just focus on alts because alts are being significantly more interesting at the moment. Ether is much the same. I mean, if you look at the Ether BTC pair down here, God, I forgot again to put my my mouse highlighter on so you can see where I am. Yeah, the BTC pair is just very much moving in a sideways consolidation. So again, we're just looking, this is a daily chart, so look for a close above to potentially flip that to support, or a close below to potentially flip it to supply. The US dollar pair has been similarly sideways and awkward because we created a daily supply just by a hair, but really just in a range on Ether Korea and on the CME pair. But we created, I haven't got it drawn in there, a daily demand just by a hair on the US dollar pair. So again, but like I say, by a hair, so there it's indecisive and it's really just like in a sideways range similar to the BTC pair. And again, like we are in 3-month demand here, so I've said a few times on Ether, you know, do try and position yourself for longs if you can. However, like my preference would have been to go a little bit lower in this zone. The confluence would have been better, like so there's a 3-week demand just down here. I've got a cross kind of hidden behind that CME gap. And then there's a daily at the base of the 3-week and much deeper inside this 3-month, but this better aligns with the 61 fib. So yeah, I kind of wouldn't mind a bit of a deep dip deeper into here, whether we get it at all, whether it just moves up from here off the 3-week demand, 3-month demand, or whether we get a move up and then come down for that before bouncing. I'm unsure at this stage, obviously. With the sideways consolidation, you know, if we get a decent close above here, you can potentially look for longs in this area, at least for a move up to 4-day supply. I think that's in there. I did remove finally some of my entries off here, but there are, again, lower time frame. There's so many zones that could get tested or tapped that have been missed, but again, it's very, very choppy. So I'd rather just assess the zones as and when they hit. So I'm sticking with the immediate zones for just lower time frame entries, possible shorts there. Then there's this weekly here, which I've still got a black cross on because again, that's the first weekly inside a 2-month. And then my preferred zones that I've talked about before up by this question mark, and this weekly supply up near the top, because those are better aligned with the 61 fib area. But each of these are kind of aligned with some 61 fib depending on what wave you're fibbing. But yeah, in the short term, I just want to see the reaction in that 22, 23 area, and on the 261 fibs that align here and here. See if we get reactions, and if we do get those reactions, are they going to push down for a new low, or are we going to now finally get some sideways consolidation before a move up? Yeah, and the lower time frame on that again is exactly the same. Like, there's nothing to add. I haven't added as yet any new entries. I may, I'll see how Monday closes, but again, today has just been messy. We did fill the CME gap on this, although we hadn't as yet on the Bitcoin pair. I know I've moved back onto Bitcoin again, sorry. It looks like we have filled the CME gap on Bitcoin now. Excuse me, back to Ether. Charts just look too similar. Yeah, so again, we cut below this very poor trend line. And we're pushing up, and we have made 4-hour demand in there, which we held, and we made another 4-hour demand, which again has been held. So we could get a push from here. Just put in that 4-hour, that new 4-hour. But yeah, I don't like this messy sideways. It's not exactly impulsive, and it's not actually making me think that people are really super interested in buying. I should actually comment on Bitcoin, there's some drama going on as well. I think on Hyperliquid, which has liquidated a lot of shorts on Ether, sorry, a lot of longs on Ether previously by somebody putting in a very large order. I think somebody now has apparently put in, I think, a 500 odd million short on Bitcoin on Hyperliquid, and I think they've changed their mechanism so it's not so dangerous as it was previously. However, I know there's been sort of some ganging up on Twitter to try and liquidate that entry. And then this wick yesterday, I think, came close to it, but they added another 5 million to cover and to push their liquidation price up to 86 something. So their liquidation price is now higher, but again, some of this messing around could be people trying to push the price up to liquidate this person who's got this 500 million short. So yeah, just be aware of like some of that fuckery going on. And yeah, don't think there's anything new to add on Bitcoin and Ether, so I'll stop that there. And majors, similarly, I haven't changed anything particularly, I don't think, from the other day. Ripple, I've still got the alert for the weekly supply, which hasn't been reached yet. Litecoin in the 3-day, but then there's also some chop and messiness, 3-day, 5-day, etc. But my first alert is at the 3-day, so we'll see. EOS also at the 3-day, more aggressive on that because I just think EOS is generally weaker. But all of these are kind of messing around in sideways anyway. We've got Litecoin has created a daily demand and Ripple has created a 12-hour, but then EOS has flipped a daily supply. So they're just sort of in like indecisive sideways. So we may get a lot more of indecisive sidewaysness before any move. BCH, I was hoping we'd get a bigger move from because this up move it had was in isolation of anything else. Like so some of the other alts had the up move because of the Trump comments, the Trump pump, Sol and ADA, and they've kind of retraced the whole thing and don't appear to be picking up any additional support. BCH did this on its own and is coming off a 6-month demand. So I said on the last stream I had this entry for daily demand here, which is still holding. I said on the last stream I was considering an entry on this new 12-hour here, but if it hit the 12-hour supply, then essentially it was going to be 50-50. So I put the alert in eventually and it has dropped through. But again, we're still just holding a sideways in this daily demand. But this, you know, this is not bad looking if we can form some sort of a triangle consolidation here. Less of a triangle at the lows, but trend line, and get some sort of a trend line breakout. That's worth watching out for. I think on this, yeah, that was the only other entry. When we broke this 12-hour, I kind of thought, okay, well maybe we'll come deeper, retrace more of the up move. So I have added an entry on 4-hour demand, a little bit lower there, in case we get more of a move within range before any sort of breakout. Yeah, so that's the old majors. The new majors, BNB's been obviously the biggest mover of all of them. So all of these, I think, yeah, all of these had long entries that I had. Dogecoin, it was a yearly, so it did come deeper inside. But BNB, ADA and Link have all bounced on those levels, but ADA has got very little traction off there so far. ADA had created a weekly supply, so that's what it's struggling with here. But again, it's holding, but just barely, not exhibiting much strength. BNB, as I said, had more strength. I did have an alert that's just above the top of that wick that hasn't quite gone off. It is in a 2-weekly supply. There is a 3-week just up here, or a little bit higher. The 3-week actually is up this area, and the alert's just slightly lower because there were a 2-day and 3-day supply beforehand. So just see what reaction we get if we move a little bit higher on that. But again, be conscious that these 4, when I did my last update, these are the 4 that I thought were going to be stronger than the other 4 majors. Hasn't really worked out that way so far on while they're holding, but we're not exactly seeing the strength on ADA, Doge and Link as yet. But they do have daily demands on Doge and Link, and ADA is just, yeah, nasty at the moment. So yeah, see what reaction we get on BNB there, but yeah, be conscious that, you know, we are coming off this yearly demand, and I was quite bullish for that bounce on the yearly level, so this is potentially just a scalp short at this stage. And yeah, other than that, I think there's nothing new on those. Again, just look back at the previous stream for any of the other entries, which are essentially, in the case of ADA, quite far away. Yeah, locally I just need to see more. I think a lot of the majors and a lot of the alts in general have so much chop. They have this 5-day supply, weekly supply, 2-weekly supply. So it's possible, you know, if we have found a bottom, that we're now just going to have some giant runs, and, you know, more like BNB, where we just run through local supply. But it's just waiting and timing that correctly, which is more difficult. So I talked quite a lot about DOT, Atom and NEAR in the previous stream. Like I didn't like any of them, but actually NEAR, ironically, NEAR was the one I sort of thought was more likely to move, but again, that's been one of the weaker ones. Atom's been much stronger. I hadn't set any short entries on any of these because of, as I just said, we've got 3-day, 5-day, 4-day, weekly supply, and you can see on Atom that it's kind of run through the initial levels because they were already tested, and has come up to the top. And then we had these trend line stops on both Atom and DOT. Nero had already taken them with the February candle, but we did have these trend line stops, so I said I wasn't comfortable with looking for shorts in here because of the trend line stops and because of the already testing the choppiness. On top of that, while I wanted Atom and DOT lower, again, I said, you know, they are at support. So how much of a bounce we get, I don't think it's a good support, and it wasn't a support I particularly wanted along. But we could still get a bounce from there. So that was the other reason I didn't particularly want to look for shorts. And in the case of DOT, so DOT's the only one I've added something new on. So DOT did make a daily demand. I had a fairly decent move away from it. It is just coming straight into supply. But given the strength we've seen on Atom, I kind of thought, well, it's worth looking for a possible long on DOT, particularly again, given that we had this stop hunt of these lows, and then we've got these trend line stops here and an untested zone above. Or multiple, but the immediate untested zone above, I think it's a 5-day or a 4-day. So given we had the stop hunt of those lows, it is possible we come up and stop hunt these highs in the trend line. So hence the more aggressive long entry on this, despite being under supply. Yeah, not much more to say there. I think Sol is in this 2-month demand. So yeah, Sol again, I think I drew in the last update, so don't really need to draw it again, but maybe I saved it this time. No, I didn't. I keep drawing it and then deleting it, but it was a structure that I had on Ripple, but much higher time frame on Sol, where we do this. So I was not overly confident of looking for longs here. However, I did put them in because it is a 2-month demand, but I've seen enough alts now break through this, and obviously Solana did get a bounce off there. It got a bounce off this retest, but then the final follow-up entry here just didn't get very far. So yeah, again, it's made daily demand, so we could still see a run from here, but this is not a demand I'm overly confident of, and I would still like to see it take out some more of these lows through here and come down into this monthly demand that's below, because this was never tested. It was an alert I had from previously that was never tested. So yeah, we need to see a bit more from these, but they're not. I mean, the majors just aren't overly exciting to trade at the moment. I mean, if you've got an Atom, congratulations, but that certainly for me wasn't one that I thought would particularly run. Yes, it took out a couple of stops in there, and I think people love swing failures, so maybe it just got some traction because of that, and or maybe an influencer promoted it or something. But personally, I'm not particularly bullish on Atom unless I see, you know, something a lot more. So it could just be running stops there, and I think the BTC pair still looks horrible. Yeah, I say that. Having said that, you know, it does have the stops here, and it does also have stops here. So, you know, maybe this can run up to $7 or $8 again. It is also overarchingly in the 6-month demand. It's not the best 6-month demand because it's from when the Binance opened trading on it. So yeah, again, I would have liked to see this in 2-week monthly demand a little bit lower. Moving. But we may or may not get that. But on all of these, you know, like if you look at, like, yes, it's possible we make V-shaped recoveries and suddenly start running up, but if you look at any of the previous lows, we do have, you know, this, we make a low, we test, we make another low, you know, and we start making these lower time frame consolidations. So we are doing a bit of that in here. We have taken out the low, but, you know, I want to see this come down, you know, maybe hold that 12-hour in there and then get a run up. Rather than just assuming this is going to break supply at this stage. You know, for the most part, we're making, occasionally we make a single bottom, but obviously this was still at a point that would have been quite bullish from the previous wave, but now we're in a much more corrective pattern. We're tending to make double bottoms, so I'm more confident of looking for longs when I actually see those double bottoms form. So yeah, that's that on the new majors. Like I say, I don't think there's any new entries since previously I've discussed them, so yeah, just go back to the previous videos to look for that. And then finally on alts. So most of the alts I've been putting in have been on the new MEXC stuff, so I did go through and add all the new MEXC listings to my lists, which obviously made my lists ridiculously even longer. But most of what I've been charting and alerting has been those for the last week or so, mainly because they don't have supply. I mean, they're pretty high risk because they don't have supply or demand, and because they haven't been around for long, and so it's hard to know if they're just going to go up for a few days, a couple of weeks, and then die 80 to 90% like so many of them do. However, at least they don't have significant supply. So where they are running on the long side, so from the longs perspective, and the longs are still a bit 50-50 on whether they work or not, but from the long perspective, they are, if they do work, then at least they have distance they can go, because they're not going to get hung up on weeks and weeks or months of supply above. And yeah, so most of them have kind of been working out reasonably well, or are just sort of consolidating and waiting, like MERL, for example. I don't know if this is really one of the newest ones, but we are now seeing, I use MERL as an example, I guess this isn't a particularly new coin, but we are now seeing at least having some significant consolidation through these lows. So it is possible, and I've said this before, there's possible supply will start to break. But I was still alerting it until I see it break. So in the case of MERL here, this is the first supply before the last fall, so it was still worth alerting. However, now because it's had so much consolidation, it's more likely that it's going to have enough demand to get through this zone. And in this case, it's made a new weekly demand, so I have added a new long alert on that as well. So in a perfect world, this will, give the short at some point down into here, give the long, and then have a move up. And we did get that actually on one of the ones I had over the weekend, TST. I don't think that's on my list at the moment. Let me show you that. TST. So it hasn't gone very far, but this is an example of one that I had. So I think I had an aggressive alert for a short here, and I think it looks like a 12-hour on this, but maybe on a daily supply. But in the meantime, it had made a daily demand, so I then alerted the daily demand for a possible long. It looks like it took a bit of a wick through that, but again, it's just trading in both directions. If you're making new demand, then great. Make a new long entry to get up to the next supply, short from that supply down to the new demand. Be conscious, that overall these are in downtrends. It's just hard to know, we've got a downtrend like this, so are we going to retrace as much as that before falling? Or are we just retracing, until, this is a 5-day supply, until the nearest supply before falling? And you've just got to make that judgment. Similarly, are we coming, in this case, obviously we're not coming from a significant demand, but if we're coming from a significant demand over here, then again, you're starting to look for supply to break, so you can start potentially getting back into an uptrend. But it's very variable depending on which coin you're looking at. I'll put this back to MERL, so I've got my more recent alerts, ones to be potentially watching. What other examples do we have here? Captain, this was an alert that went previously, so again this is another similar one. I had an alert on the 12-hour demand here, and I have an alert on 5-day for a 5-day supply for a short. So again, just I think I haven't updated this. I'm not sure, maybe that hasn't hit. I need to refresh this page because it doesn't refresh. Obviously that alert has gone off, but it doesn't refresh the alerts unless you refresh the page. So that's CAPTAINBNB, PLUME. Well, PLUME I'll get to in a sec. So A8 was another one I was looking at. Obviously had a very decent move, and these are the ones I've said watch out for the short entry. So obviously it's a really strong move up from there, but only on very low time frame, made very little support or little demand. So again, watching that. So we've had a nice reaction to start. I did have an alert for the 30-minute supply here for a possible re-entry, but it didn't unfortunately get up high enough, and I didn't look again. It had then subsequently made a 2-hour in here, which got rejected. And then I looked again just before the stream, and it's now got an 8-hour supply here. So again, worth looking for a possible short. It's not really the strongest move away from this zone. I still don't love that it's got a 30-minute untested up there. and it's also got this hourly here, so don't necessarily FOMO straight in at the level, but just watch what it does through here. If you get the retest, and see if you can get the short back down to here. On this, I put a more aggressive long on this hourly demand here just to see, but potentially it could still run back down, taking out the filling the gap from the initial breakout. STONKS is another one that just messing around, and it's hard to judge what it's going to do. I thought this might break down today because it came down quite heavily into this daily demand. It's a little bit like PLUME, which I'll show in a moment. You've got this sort of sideways triangle thing going on. So I don't know, it might mess around and wreck a few people, and maybe go take some longs into this daily at the bottom before it runs. So I might have a look at that a bit later and see about putting an alert there, possibly. PWEASE has been a nice one, was a nice scalp long from the weekend there. I just didn't go a lot higher so I was a bit nervous about this one because of the fact it had done this sort of 3 hits to the high, but it did manage to hold, I don't know what that was that a 4 hour or 8 hour demand here for a little bit of a run to take out the high, and it's now come back down. It's on a 3-day demand here. But again, I'm just conscious of, again, the trading both directions. It's made a new daily supply, which it's rejected, and it does have another 8 hour, 12 hour inside it. Because it's a new coin, it also has the possibility that it's just going to fall off a cliff at this point. So it's worth looking for shorts on this as well, and more aggressive shorts. So while if it was a more established coin and if we were in more of a bull market, I wouldn't look for a short there, being we're on 3-day demand here. But again, are we just going to still get messing around sideways, and if we get a bounce here, go a bit deeper in the zone, and then we'll just see. So that's PWEASE, awful name. And then yeah, PLUME. So PLUME just causes me physical pain. I was bullish on this for a breakout from the triangle because we had a weekly demand. It was nice here, but then I had 3 times, like this was the original trend line I had, 3 times we had weak breaks of the trend, and then it just came back down, and it came back down. Then I think I had an aggressive 4 hour demand alert here, which did nothing because by that stage it wanted to break down lower. So I then relented and put my alert back down on this 4 hour demand, thinking, okay, maybe we'll come back to the bottom of the range. And then I said I put an aggressive short entry on the daily supply here. And I said, if this fails and the market hates me, just give a tiny scalp, but didn't again. I think at that point I did have this entry here as well on the 12 hour demand, but it didn't come deep enough for that, and then has now taken off. And I did look at this last night, and I was wanting to see if it was going to create a new weekly demand, but it closed exactly at the level. So I left it alone, and then now, as of today, obviously it's done that. Apparently it's had some news, so I'm not sure whether this is sustainable, whether it's good news, or, and it's hard to know in this market at the moment, whether these pumps are sustainable. I moved the alert up anyway. There is a new 3-day demand in here now, and the daily here, so I moved this up in case we get a test there. I mean, maybe we'll hold if we get a test off the top here, but I don't like it when I see a gap, particularly if it's a news pump. But anyway, yeah, that's just frankly quite annoying. So I've kind of managed to miss the breakout on that, although if you traded this, I mean, to be fair, I did say in the group as well, just trade at high time frame. Like, you didn't need to trade this, every scalp trying to get the tight entries. This could have just been traded, from anywhere through here with a stop down here, and you'd still be in the trade. But this is just looking for scalp entries like I normally do. L3 is just another one I've had hit this afternoon. I think I haven't really looked at it properly, but yeah, it looks like a weekly supply there. There's a monthly higher if it does run through this zone, but it would be nice to get it dropped down. I think I was considering putting long entries in on this, but I think on the 12 hour and 8 hour it's just a bit messy. They're not very nice clean zones, and maybe this top one would hold, being a retest of the weekly, if that's a deviation of this range. But again, with the bigger market downtrend, I'm not overly confident yet, unless I see a clean daily zone or something here, or preferably, like, a few things have got new 5 days, but for the most part we're still in a fairly ugly downtrend on most things. We'll see that as I get into the T's. Yeah, so I think that's it on the new alerts recently. I think most of them are... Jelly's just come in. That was one of the ones that was actually more... Yeah, that kind of ran through. So I had an alert, I think, for 5-day supply in here, and has run through. It did also have this weekly. So that's kind of one of the ones that's got stronger, and it's just hit an alert for this. And structurally, this doesn't surprise me. And so again, just for educational purposes, you know, we've got a downtrend, we've got a retracement, we've got another down move. This down move isn't significantly breaking the low. So while we can look for shorts here, you know, and on the weekly that I had, the bigger weekly, and you can see the amount of chop through here, that it's not necessarily a high probability short. So as you can see here, in this case, it's run through. Having said that, you know, the whole market may be turning around, but is still currently in a downtrend. So I'm still putting these alerts in, because, you know, it is possible that that happens. Excuse me, let me just have another drink. And you're really just looking at the low time frame. So all the alerts are is for you to say, okay, this is a zone that I may expect to see. You can see actually I had the alert on 3-day supply on here. I need to refresh this page. Might do that in a moment before I start. Okay, so I've got alerts twice on some of the T's. Can't afford to waste them. But yeah, like you can see on this that, you know, I had this massive up move, and I had one of my group was asking me about this and said they'd shorted 3 times and got stopped out. And I said, well, you know, firstly it has, you know, where's your nearest demand? And in this case, this is the nearest demand out on the hourly, and it hadn't broken it. So if you want to be safe, you know, you're at least waiting for the first demand to break and then shorting supply. If you want to be more aggressive, sure, you can short in here, but then short once with your stop above there. Alternatively, you know, wait for a higher time frame. You know, this made a lot of hourly. I think possibly a 2-hourly supply. But you want to see rejection off this 2-hourly break the demand. You know, so once it starts rebuilding like this, you know, it's got this 2-hourly supply in here, but it's hit multiple times. So it then becomes unsurprising that it's going to run through it. So yeah, all these zones are, so, and what I want to see, you know, so I've said before, I still put the entries in, and I'll show as I go through the T's, that I still put the entries in for aggressive shorts, but just being conscious that we have gone down for a very long time now. We've got a lot of chop on a lot of these things that could get stop hunted. Jelly's slightly annoying one, actually. You know, I really wanted the higher low here. It had a decent move up there, but yeah, for the extra stop hunt before the move is irritating. And then also not coming back for the re-entry there. And this might make a new daily demand here as well, so you could potentially watch that for a long re-entry if it comes back there and confirms that today, if it can hold. Yeah, just see what we get. I mean, it's very little history, so if it does make it through this supply, it could just keep going. So it is, yeah, worth an eye on the long side here if you want to get an aggressive long entry on that. Okay, anyway, let me just reload this page. Excuse me. Yeah, and we've got 40 minutes so far, so I'll try and be pretty quick on the rest of the stream, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to speak. Yeah, okay, so you can see at the moment I've got a new long entry on this Jelly at the 8-hour or 12-hour demand, 12-hour then 1-day demand. There, I've said still coming from weekly supply, which obviously isn't now. And this is probably flipping some higher time frame. So actually didn't quite flip the weekly on this either, but again, if it holds up here, you know, it does have a 5-day in there, and it's not the cleanest zone, so just need to see you know, what kind of reaction and consolidation it might get if it hits this, if this becomes a daily level and it hits there. Anyway, on to the T's. So many on the list. And once I've done this, I'll be able to focus a lot more on just individual alts and what's looking good, but I really wanted to update all the charts for the yearly. And also now, so obviously we're about to get towards the end of March, so I have now also started adding 3 month zones on anything that has them, and alerting some of them. So obviously, disclaimer for the group who are getting the alerts, if we hit the 3 month alerts before the monthly closes, then obviously they are not valid. TICO here, I've alerted, I think, just for the 2 monthly supply, or maybe, it's got a weekly underneath. And my other issue, you can see the chop, so I've got a 3 week supply up here that hasn't been tested inside this 2 month. We've got a weekly at the 2 month level, 2 week up here as well, and it becomes awkward when we just don't know how much of this we will retrace. So I'm alerting some more aggressively than others, as I've said in the previous stream. So in this case, I've alerted just for the 1 week and 2 month here. Obviously it can run higher in the zone. And in this case, the other thing is, I was torn. I think I did alert this 5 day here, because I'm seeing, some of these are just coming up and just rejecting straight off there and not making it back up to these 2 month zones. But in this case, I think because of this possibility of a stop hunt, dot there, it's going to annoy me, my OCD-ness. Because we've got these stops above here, I thought, okay, maybe not in this case, and if the market does want to do a bigger up move, then it's fairly likely to probably take out the stops above there. Obviously TAIKO, I've got no long entry because it's just going to hell, unless it's got some history from previous here that I don't have. TAI. So this one, I always thought this was going to come and take out these lows. Obviously, it had to do that first. This is much like I actually just said on Sol. This is really exactly the same scenario. We've got the triangle and then the distribution. So it doesn't surprise me we came and took out these stops. I had an alert here for a stop hunt if it swing failed those lows, but it didn't. It barely got any bounce off there. And now I've had an alert. The alert actually did go here for 3 day. So there's a 3 day and a 2 day demand here. 3 days in area, so I reset the alert because it was a little early and it bounced a little early. But yeah, that's something to watch if we get a bit more of a drop on there, either down to when's that, 0.5 or 58 or 5.8 cents, or down to this 2 day a bit lower. You can see again here the challenge and the same chop that we've got all the way down. All these zones have been tested, but then they do leave behind high time frame. Well, they are creating high time frame zones as well. So in the case here, it's looking like we're going to get a 3 month supply. But so it's again, so I've alerted the level for the 3 month supply, but it could still take a whole lot of these stops. And there's a 5 day up here that isn't quite tested. But even then, I think when you go all the lower time frames, you can see that okay, maybe it didn't test that level on the 5 day chart, but it did wick up into that area. And really, when you're looking for strong zones, you're looking for a decent move away. So, even here, we had a decent move away from this zone. Okay, we got a bounce here and it didn't make a higher high or anything, but, at least that gets a decent reaction. Whereas some of these zones then become challenging because we haven't really had decent moves away. There is a bit of a gap in here with this daily supply here. So that's about the only, and here. So we've got some earlier possibilities, but yeah, with this, because again, too many options, so I've just stuck with the 3 month on that. Talent, one that's just going to hell. Exactly the same as what I said on TAIKO. We've got a 2 month supply up here, there's a 2 week inside that wasn't tested, there's a whole bunch of 5 day mess there. I don't even know if it's going to get back up there, so in this case, I put it across there, but I haven't actually alerted, because something like this may never, I don't want to waste an alert on this. If it does get back up there, it's very possible that it wicks through. So, if this is something you're trading, then you can look in that area for shorts. But I figured I would just leave that alone because I don't know. And the other thing is, yeah, it's rejecting every, it goes sideways a bit and then just dies. So it could just reject off this retest here if it comes in here. It's certainly not something I want to long yet, but it will be potentially as a nice long when it does get ready, so you can keep an eye on it on the long side, but absolutely not a long right now. But yeah, so that's fairly difficult chart, and just not something I want to waste an alert on. Tau, I know a lot of people finding kind of interesting. So we had this monthly demand here, which took a wick through. So I did look for a long here on the retest. I think there was another monthly in here as well, which also goes down to the bottom of the wick. So this could bounce from here. This is a possibility. But this is the challenge I have when I look at all these charts, that so many of them are on the high time frame or in these sideways ranges. So in the case of Tau, we have had an up move. We've gone sideways. So, is this just a sideways range that is eventually going to break out? Or should I view this as, okay, it's a lower high, so we're going to take out that low, and or potentially even come all the way back down to the start of this move. So I'm still quite torn. I'm erring still towards more bearish because, for a couple of reasons. So in the case of this, if we ignore that wick, but if we, on many of these things, if we're looking at these demands, test, 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 fifth test. So I err towards the short side based on multiple tests on demand. Like when you have multiple tests on demand, on support, on anything, eventually they break. Yes, it might find support here, yes it might run, but I don't think it's overly high probability. And then on top of that, they've got so much supply above. So I don't think Tau's going to make, or Tau might make a 3-month if it closes under here. It's actually still in a 3-month demand, but not a very good one, and obviously come right down to the bottom of it. This now has a monthly supply up here, and then I've got slightly more aggressive on the 2-week supply with the short entry, possible short entry there. And then, like I say, it's just a question of what happens as and when we get there. So, the options, this can get find support here, get a decent bounce breakout. Do I think that's very likely? Not particularly. Or if it does, then it should take time. We could get a rejection here on the 2-week supply and then a move down into there before having another move up. Or even a move down even below that 3-day. On the 2-week, that was the 2-week chart. Or, we could get a run here up to the top, they're still treating this as a range up to this upper supply, and then get the rejection. And I think that's reasonably good probability as well. And actually now I look at it, particularly with these sort of relatively equal highs here, it is possible it goes for those. But in the short term, and also, so this 2-week supply isn't particularly strong because we haven't closed below that wick, and these wicks also making it super awkward. However, it is a 2-week zone, so I do think it's worth looking just to see what reaction we get in here. If we push higher, then we have a monthly supply and also those equal highs to contend with. But overall on this, my bias for Tau particularly is more sideways than down, but with an erring towards down because of the monthly supplies above. I don't think it's tested that monthly, let me just check. So it tested this top monthly and then it's made a new monthly sitting underneath it. And it's had some wicks and things going up into it, so again, like I say, it's a bit more difficult, but we had a stronger move down from this 2 weeks, so I think it's worth looking for shorts in here. And then we just need to see if they hold demand. But so I'm more sideways biased on this than other things, which are much more down. So other things you'll see that they've broken this zone or they've hit it already 3 or 4 times, rather than this being the second high time frame ignoring the swing fail. So on Tau we'll see, so watch for a reaction if we get to take out that wick, then I'd be more bullish if we had a swing fail of the low of this wick. So in a perfect world I'd like to see this come up, have some sort of rejection in there and come down, and then see the entry for longs on that. Failing that, if you really want to trade this, then also you're looking just at the lower time frames. This is making a sort of a little triangle structure here. I'm not sure at least this stage, from these, are we going to break up or break down? This could be a bear flag for a down move, or it could be a reversal pattern. So it's up to you if you want to jump into that there. To be fair, on the long side, it's a reasonable trade if you are very bullish on this. I think people are bullish on this from a fundamental perspective as well. So if you are very bullish on this, it is possible we get some decent move taking out all of these stops now. And it does at least have a reasonable, you can enter now and put your stop below here for a reasonable risk to reward. TFUEL. So another, very sideways one, like I say, on Tau, exactly the same scenario. You know, we've got this monthly demand in here, we've had multiple bounces, we've gone up. This, in this case, hasn't quite got to supply, and has come back down again. So it might hold here for a second bounce, is possible. Would prefer, again, to see the swing fail of these lows before looking for a move up. But also, you know, it's at a point, you know, is this going to break down with a new monthly supply above? So in the case of this, I've alerted the monthly supply. It's had some wicks on the lower time frames up inside it. Or 2 monthly supply there, in fact. It's fairly clean 2 month, but they are large. So again, when I said the 2 monthly supply, we'd just be aware these are larger zones. I mean, in some cases, I'm just not doing the detail of the analysis to kind of go, oh, well, this is a monthly supply, but we might go to this untested daily up here, for example. Because in crypto it's quite hard to judge anyway, and whether they're going to wick through and take these stops is hard to know until you actually see the reaction or see the zone hit. And to the downside, yeah, I mean, at this point, you know, it does have a yearly level in here, but it's a yearly based on when Binance listed it, so it's not necessarily a good yearly, and in fact it's already hit on that wick. So in a perfect world, I would like an entry on this all the way down here. But we'll see. This is, you know, this could be making, you know, it is in the bigger picture, it has had an up move, it's corrected, it has had the initial bounce, it could just make a higher low here. That is possible that this can turn bullish. I'm just being more bearish because of the 2 month supply, and this is what's making me nervous across the market at the moment. THETA, I think, is actually pretty similar. So yeah, I'll share this chart just to start with. My alerts are on the other chart, but again, yeah, very much like TFUEL, it's had this monthly demand, it's hit it a few times, it's had a bounce up. In this case, it's come straight up into monthly supply, and now it's come back down and testing. So if it does swing fail here and hold this monthly, then this could be a decent trade. But I think the problem is, again, let me just check my other chart, is that this potentially actually has 3 months supply. So if this, I mean, we've still got, yeah, 10 days, 13 days to the close, but potentially is going to create a 3 month supply there, and if it does, then I will certainly be looking much more at shorts. Again, I've been slightly more aggressive on shorts here. It didn't quite create a 2 month supply, in fact, on this, and is monthly demand. But it does have, yeah, so it's got a 5 day supply in there. So again, I just want to see the reaction. I think I've just gone slightly more aggressive on this, putting a 5 day supply alert in. It has a weekly supply above. So I'm not sure why I think I went more aggressive on this just because it's at the 2 monthly level, and I've seen a few of these reject, even if they haven't confirmed the 2 monthly level, I've seen a few reject local supply at that level. And THETA, being one of the bigger coins, is more likely to have some sideways chop like this, rather than, unlike the smaller low liquidity coins, which are more likely to just throw a giant candle through everything if it gets any demand at all. So I'd like to see the reaction here, and then again, I've set a more aggressive alert on 3 week demand. I would like to see this test a little bit lower there. But I could potentially get bullish on this if I see a bounce on this 3 week. If I can see this come up, reject the first supply, come down into this 3 week and hold there, then there's more likely, if it's already rejected the initial supply, at least it's got decent risk to reward to get higher in the 3 month. Similarly, if it negates the 3 month, if we actually get a close up here, flip this 5 day supply to demand, etc., then I'll be more inclined to get bullish. But it's very early to get bullish on this, other than hitting support, which is a good thing. I just don't know if we're going to get a lot of this sideways action before having any sort of decent move. So I'm hoping, at least with the ones that could be bullish, that we're going to get some more time. THE, so I have 2 charts on this as well. I'm using the Binance chart for the highs, but CoinEx has some history. So I have sent an alert here for what's annual demand, and then also 3 weekly demand at the lows. So I think I still would like to see this have another move down. I mean, if you look at the Binance chart, yeah, so obviously, again, we've still got all the chop of supply through here. There's a monthly at the top, there's a 3 week in there, there's a 2 week in there. So I've alerted the immediate 2 week just more aggressively. And there's a 5 day supply there. I'd like to see a reaction off here to take it down into the base of this candle and hopefully into this zone. So we'll see on that. Here's an interesting one. Another one with 2 months supply. So yeah, I'm reticent with this. I know some people have been calling this and have been like being more bullish on this. I can't justify it as yet because again this is rejected 2 months supply. So I'll just hide my drawing so you can see. So it created a 2 month supply here with this close below the January-February candle, and then it's tapped up into it on the March candle. And it's coming down off that now. It does have a 2 month demand at the low. So I'm torn, you know, obviously I had the long entry there, but it's made a 2 month supply in the interim. So now when I look at the lower time frames, you've got that rejection there off the 2 month supply. It could go higher inside the zone, obviously, and still respect the fact this is a 2 month supply. But it's not clean enough on the demand side for me to want to look for longs on this, and the fact it's coming. So if the 2 month supply plays out, then I expect it to take out this low. That would be the full play out of a 2 month supply. Therefore, to look for longs, and you can see it's sort of gone back through this. They had a daily demand in there, but it's gone through anyway. But yeah, I know some people want to be more bullish on this, and maybe they're right. You know, I suppose in the bigger picture, you know, we are retraced. We are now back at the start of the initial impulse back in, what's that, 2023. But I guess I'm seeing too much, too many things just break down. You know, I've had a lot of entries like this, and I'm just seeing a lot that are getting a small bounce, hitting supply, and then just going lower. So this at least has held a high low, and it has had a decent bounce off there. But I need to see a bit more. You know, you can see now it's made a local daily. So when you go down to the daily, then it becomes so choppy and there's so much more detail. But I need to see some significant supply broken. So okay, we've got 2 months in here anyway, but even that aside, it's gone up to the top. It's really kind of, that's a 4 day, I think. Yeah, so it's gone near the top of that 4 day, but it's still retaining a local downtrend here and having rejected that 4 day supply. So we could still get, you know, it's still rejecting this 4 day. If it breaks that 4 day, it may be a different story. But the challenge being is if it breaks the 4 day, we're still going to go straight up into a 3 week downtrend or a 2 month downtrend. Hence the challenge. But I mean, maybe I'd look for longs on this if I had more clean demand. You know, it actually did hold that daily in the first bounce, but then again straight off supply. And this is actually probably quite a good example from some of the longs that the long alerts that I put in. That yes, I'm alerting, you know, if we have daily demands like this, so you can get that initial entry. Actually, that's not a daily, that's actually a 4 day demand in there. But so you can get the entry here, for example, for an up move, but it still needs to break. We still can't say, you know, that this is a breakout because it hasn't broken out of anything. Like on the low time frame, sure, but you know, even on this time frame, it's still rejecting. Hasn't made a new swing high. Having said that, you know, like we just need to see the reactions, and I think it's worth actually looking at these and trying to get in, because some of them are going to take off, like we saw that on JELLYJELLY, for example. Preferably the ones with less supply, though. I would choose not ones like TIA, you know, because I remember even here everyone was talking about, oh, TIA is going to go up. There were people longing for ages through here, where I think a lot of the rest of the market was moving, and I just kind of I tried the first couple, I think, on. This would have been like, yeah, holding that demand, and then this, obviously it came deeper, held that demand, and then this would have been a retest in the hope this would get another move up from here, but then it just started to drift. And at that point I was like, no, I just want to wait, I don't want to long this till it's down here. The only thing I did consider was that when it made this trend line, so I then did have an alert for the trend line break, but again, straight up into 2 week supply up here, just short of the monthly, I guess, and dropped. So it ended up being one of the weaker ones, but everybody was still keen on this because of the 2023 pump, thinking it was going to pick up again. But a lot of the things with the pumps in 2023 haven't picked up their game since. But yeah, anyway, so in the case of this, I've just put an alert for now on the next 5-day supply. Be conscious it's coming off the 2-month demand, and we'll just see what we get when it gets there. But the 2-month supply and the 2-month demand are the two things that are competing on this. TICO. I think this was a bit like with the talent I was talking about earlier, that it's hard because it's just low volume and can be highly volatile. So I did set an alert here for 3-day supply, because I think if you can get in a short on there, if it works, it could potentially go to 0. So because we see a lot on the MEXC coins. However, I also think, you can see on this candle, this is the daily chart, but you may or may not get the entry depending on how fast this potentially wicks up. So maybe a bit of a waste of an alert, but we'll see. But yeah, it looks like it's pretty low volume coin there. TLM, another one that's just broken demand. So in fact, it's really just been in a downtrend since the outset, but did have demand here, bounced off it, then swing failed it, then bounced again, got an up move, but has now come down and broken that level. So obviously short biased, we're still in a downtrend. But another one with the challenge that it's got this new 2-week supply in here. Excuse me, this cough sounds horrendous, doesn't it? It's got the new 2-week supply in there. It's got a weekly, but I think it has, it's got 5-day and a 5-day underneath it. But just again, that chop and the trend line. So I do see, some of these have the potential. I'll get to, I think there's a couple more later as well, but I've just gone more conservative on the alert just because of the prospect of taking out these trend lines, particularly given we've got this stop hunt of the lows. But also you need to take these on a case-by-case basis. I think the shorts on these ones are very scalpable, but you've got to be watching them. And so you can see that's made a 3-day supply there, and it's obviously come off it on the previous candle. And then it's like, what demand has it made in between? So obviously this has made a daily demand. So those, quite welcome to look for longs on those if you want. My preference would be if it was in a higher time frame demand at the base, and this isn't. So. But yeah, things like these I could see run those stops, particularly because it hasn't tested this daily zone right above, or 2-day zone that is. So again, just too many zones. Is this going to retrace the whole down move? I'm not sure. So in this case, it's got a 2-month supply, so I put an alert there for the 2-month, and I've just commented there is potentially going to be a 3-month supply in the middle as well. Whether it will reject the levels or go to some lower time frame inside, I don't know. We just need to judge that when it gets there. TNSR, another one that appears to be breaking down. So I put an alert for what's going to be or likely to be a 3-month supply in there. And it will have a 2-day, I guess, at the level, maybe a 3-day as well. No, 2-day at the levels. It's got a 3-day above, it's got a 5-day up here. Again, a bunch that are untested. If it does end up looking more like a deviation or swing failure here, maybe these aren't going to work and we're going to go higher in the zone. But I've alerted, if it's a 3-month supply, I think it's certainly worth having the alert at the level if that confirms. So that's one of the ones that may or may not confirm in the next 10 days, 2 weeks. Excuse me. Token, another one that's broken below the lows. I might just have a little break quickly and have a bit of a cough and a bit of a drink. Maybe get a hot drink actually. Let me just finish token while I'm here. So another one that's just broken down below the lows. So I hadn't alerted this in time. Like some of these, if you can see this consolidating underneath this orange line, then by all means take aggressive shorts off there. Certainly another one that's just too many zones all the way up here. So you can look for shorts just on aggressive shorts again on this 3-day supply immediately there. I've at the moment got a very conservative alert, assuming possibly that this might swing fail. And like I say, I wanted some higher alerts as well. Yeah, excuse me a moment while I take a quick break. and I'll be back. Hi again, I'm back. See if I can get through the rest of this stream quickly without having another epic coughing fit. Apologies for that. Yeah, so token, I was kind of looking at this while I was coughing, thinking I'm not sure why I was so conservative, and I think it was, again, just to have a variety. You know, this has got a lot of 5 days and 3 days and chop throughout the way down. It does have a nice clean 2 month supply there, but again, it's tested it on the low time frame, so it makes it challenging. This will have a 3 week supply that's untested and a 3 monthly supply in there as well. Potentially we'll have a 3 monthly supply inside the 3 week. So I tend to find if there are high time frame supplies or demands that haven't been tested, price can be more inclined to go to those zones rather than reject at lower time frame zones below, particularly once the trend is reversed. Maybe that's because what people are looking at for take profit. So let's say this reverses now and gets through that 3 day supply and rejects this 4 or 5 day above and then makes a new demand, then yes, maybe you're just going to get smaller rejections like this before the bigger move when it hits something much more significant, because you're then getting increasing demand fighting the lower time frame supplies perhaps. I'm not sure what the logic would be there, but yeah, if it has got untested zones higher, then it could be inclined to go higher. In fact, this even has a 1 month untested all the way at the top. So let's see anyway if this ends up being a swing failure here, but it could be an interesting one to get in. Either short, so if you see a short here on the 3 day, there's nothing wrong with taking an aggressive short entry on that. But then we can see if it starts forming an uptrend, if it ends up as a swing fail of this low. Tommy's just downtrend from hell. And this kind of illustrates also why it becomes difficult, because you want to, like this, I think I was looking for possibilities of longs to try and get up to higher demands at these points, but in the end this has just really just died. But at some points in time it does make a slightly bigger move. This one, not that one, because that's not really to a decent supply, but like in this case, you know, it broke through some 3-day supplies there at least, or maybe higher time frame, and then came up to the weekly up here. In this case, you know, it probably broke through something, I'm not sure, but like locally here, it broke through 3-day or weekly there, but only on a wick, and then just went up to a daily that was untested higher, but didn't come up into the weekly. And I think I remember that actually. I think I had entries on this weekly for re-entries. And then now, you know, is this literally just going to zero? This is, so yeah, this is one of the ones again, so it's got those trend line stops there, so if this does reverse, it's likely to have a decent move, but is it going to reverse? I don't know. I mean, it's made trend line stops throughout this entire down move. But yeah, there is a monthly supply, but I haven't alerted it, because again, if it gets enough traction to get to this level, then I expect it'll probably take out those stops. But it may even never get to that level. You know, this could just continue its drift of death until, you know, maybe we're going to have a bull market, and that is going to be the one candle that it's going to manage in the bull market that'll give this short entry and then die again forever. So we'll just have to see. Ton gave a nice long entry off this monthly. I was slightly wary of it because of the trend line stops, but it did just hold the top of that. And again, now it's just something back up into local supply, so you can't be longing this right now. I didn't get to it soon enough to potentially have short entries here, but I would have been wary of those coming off monthly demand anyway. So you can look for shorts if it comes back up into this 2-month supply. Again, the same chop here, just to be cautious of. It could go higher into the zone. This also, you know, can just be a continuation of the uptrend now. So that is a decent retracement of a decent up move, so it could run straight through. You know, we now do have monthly demand competing with 2-month supply, so we'll see. But what we're looking for is, you know, much the same as what we've got here, that you've got that bounce, you know, it's come back down to major demand at the start of the impulse. You've got the bounce, and then this presumably had monthly supply, or at least weekly, 2 weekly, 3 weekly up there, and then it just consolidates. So you still get the rejection, you still potentially get some shorts, but when you see the consolidation happening, then you know it's kind of building for the breakout. So again, maybe that's what we get through here, that we just get this consolidation and eventually we get the breakout. So just wait and see. The other thing to be aware of here, though, I guess, is that, take my brush off, is that, you know, we do have a bounce, and then we do have that second test of demand. So this is what I would like to see here. And again, I mulled over where to have other long entries. Be conscious that it could still run through these stops. So there is a monthly and a weekly demand down here that's not tested. But in the more immediate term, there's a weekly, hasn't quite hit this weekly zone here. And if we ignore, you know, the possibility of a stop hunt, maybe we'll get that, you know, the rejection here, and it will come and take out these lows before we get the move up. I would have put, again, there's another one, I would have put potentially a more aggressive entry on this 12-hour or 8-hour, but this, again, just a bit too much chop through here for me. I would rather see something cleaner, that it's just messy. So again, could come down and take out all these stops. But again, you can look around this area if we get a retest down there. At the moment, in fact, it's still holding this 4-hour demand here. Gosh, this is awful. So it could just push straight through, could have sold that 4-hour and could push straight through this supply and go straight up into there. If it comes up into here first, then I'll be probably slightly more wary. I would rather see a retest. Doesn't necessarily have to make a lower low, but I would rather see a retest here before a move up into there. Like if it goes straight up into here, then I probably expect it to reject straight back down again. Torn, another fairly challenging one, that it's coming, you know, up off a bigger downtrend, but it's gone up into 3-month supply. It's now just rejecting, and it's already kind of done this today, so I haven't been able to put the entry in, but it's kind of rejecting off immediate off a monthly supply there, so I'm not biased to the long side, but it's difficult because it has this new weekly demand. So it's not a weekly demand I want to long for it for a start, you know, even if it does work, it's too big, and to have your stop down here is too far away. but with a rejection off monthly supply in here, it's not, you know, but I guess what I would hope for on this, you know, given we have the 3-month supply at the high and then we've got this larger monthly, what I would like to see is probably a move down into here, hold this as support, come back up a bit higher into the monthly supply and then get the bigger drop. So we'll just see what happens. Like, if there's something you want to trade, you know, you can look for longs here. Maybe you'll be right. There is, you know, an old 3-monthly level, or a 3-monthly, not old, but a 3-monthly level at that area. So it's possible it holds. But based on how I trade, like I don't like trading in the middle of nowhere. So if we're, you know, the low here is made right in the middle of this candle, and that doesn't, yeah, I don't like that. And that, you know, that doesn't mean it won't hold, doesn't mean this weekly won't hold for another move up higher in the 3-month supply. That's possible. But I would rather, yeah, wait this out and get the entry, a better entry down in this 3-month demand below if it revisits. TOSHI, another bit of a messy one, but again, still in an uptrend. So I did have long entries, aggressive long entries on this 3-day demand in here, but it did take a wick through it. My concern with this, again, is sort of similar to others. You know, it has a monthly demand below and it hasn't tested it. And then it's got a weekly all the way at the bottom of that. So is it going to hold? It's closed above this 2 months, so I guess it could hold here, having held that level. And that's why I think I had the more aggressive looking at that 3-day demand here. So it's possible this can run from here still. But I guess my preference would be to have this, you know, I think, so I put check the reaction at level, but it could drop to the 4-5-day demand at the bottom. Yeah, so I'm a bit uncertain on this. I think if you're already in a long, it's worth holding because it does have some space. You know, it has tested this first supply and it's come back down, and it might be holding now this 3-day level as having regained support on that level with a deviation below it. So that's certainly worth watching if you want to get into longs on this. It's probably one of the most bullish that I've seen so far, and also structurally that it could move. I've got an alert here on weekly supply. If we get back up there for the possibility of a short entry. So again, you know, like I think another comment across the whole market, I think that you know, I was looking over here that, you know, people will get very used to back from people who are around like 2017, 2018, even 2020, 2021, you know, we're used to these sort of big moves that continue and go long distances. And I think it's with the new stuff, that's why I say it's worth watching the new coins. With the new stuff without supply, it's worth watching for that because you can potentially, in this case, it's gone from, I don't know what that is, 200% or something. Where's my price? So if this one, oh, a lot more actually, 800%. So you will get these, when it hasn't got a history, you will get these bigger moves, but the more history we have, the less likely we are to, the more challenging the coin will find making those big moves. So if you really want the big moves and you're an investor or a holder, then it's worth looking at the newer coins. TOSHI kind of falls into that category. You know, it's only been around for October 2023, but it's more likely that we're going to get rejection. So here, and then at least some consolidation through before, and you see similar here. This is what I commented on it, you know, that yes, it has, you know, it's found support here, it has had a decent up move, but it's by then it's got supply in here, so then we see a bigger drop. So potentially this is what I would see here, that we can get a move up into here. We've also got the swing fail of the high, or the deviation of the high there, you know, which then means can it come down and take out all these stops. But in the more immediate term, are we just going to get some sideways, you know, movement rather than some big giant green candle all of a sudden? And we'll need the whole market to go very bullish for that to happen, and I just don't really see that happening at the moment. TRB, again, high time frame, you can be bullish on this where it's in an annual demand, but it didn't get much of a bounce off the level, and now we're in the first 2 day in it. So again, you can keep an eye on this because this could do a decent run if it wants to. But then also, again, with some crypto, is it just dead now? You know, when we got, you know, it was an outlier in the massive up move it had in 2023 to, when's that start of 2024, or just the end of 2023. and it's just been retracing ever since then. So now is nobody caring about TRB anymore? You know, why? I don't know why this happened. Was this just, or was it because it actually has value, or was it just because, you know, some random whale decided that was the one that was going to pump? So I don't know. I guess we'll see. And we're happy the same with BLZ. You know, that we had 1 or 2 coins around that time that were just, you know, was looking for shorts, and a lot of other things, you know, rejected these levels. But a couple of them didn't. A couple of them just kept going. TRB and BLZ, I think, were the 2 at that time. I think there might have been the 3rd one, but I forget which. But yeah, so in the case now, this, you know, certainly look for longs on this, but we are currently still under 2-week supply, new 2-week supply, and also a 5-day, etc. You know, I haven't put aggressive shorts on this. I've stuck with the what's that, 2 monthly supply up here. Yeah, so it's got a clean 2 monthly supply up there, so that's certainly worth looking for shorts. It's coming off a 3-month at the high. So this rejection was 3-month supply, hence my aggressive alerts up there for shorts. And then, yeah, so it's very possible that this retraces down, back down to the start of this impulse. Whether it comes up here first, hopefully we'll get the short entry there, and then I'd look for a move down into here, but being conscious that we are on an annual demand. TRIAS, another one that's sort of like, which was it? Token, I think, just trying to break the low. It's got, I don't know why I haven't put any alerts on this actually. Maybe I gave up or forgot to put an alert on this. I think possibly because it was already tested. So on the monthly, we have a monthly supply. We have a monthly supply at the top which hasn't been tested. Or actually it did, it got tested on the next candle immediately after. Made a new monthly supply, dropped down, rejected monthly supply. Made a new low. Then came back up, tested that monthly supply, in fact tested it twice, tested higher inside it and dropped back down, now has made a new monthly supply. And similarly has rejected that on the January candle, and now we're just dropping again. So I guess it makes it hard, again, which levels to alert, but I will say I think I obviously gave up or forgot about shorting or got confused on this. So we've got a 3-week here that's untested at the same level as that new monthly. So that's interesting. And then there's a 3-week immediately closer to price. And this is kind of a nice example, I guess, of what we see on quite a lot of the other ones. You know, like I've said, we've got these trend line stops, and then at some point we tend to throw a large candle through. But at what point? You know, in this case, it happens to have stopped here, but trying to judge which point it might stop at, and this one maybe is a little bit cleaner because it did have a retracement in there. But trying to judge at what point, you know, these large stop hunting moves are going to reject is pretty hard. I think maybe I just got a bit uncertain here as to whether we're going to reject this 3-week. But again, if this is a swing failure, this could run some stops through here. I think it's worth having an alert on that monthly again, and given there's a clean 3-week at the level. So I'll stick an alert in here and see what we get if it hits. No, I don't want to delete it. So yeah, we'll just see what we get there, but it may, you know, it could just get hung up on this 3-week, 2-week. This is possibly why I didn't set that alert, because it's possible this just falls off a cliff here. So yeah, it needs a bit more time. Again, you know, it could be a swing fail of the low, but we need to see a lot more on the lower time frames and a lot more strength coming off these, you know, making new daily demands, but very, very weak ones. So we need to just see if this is going to get any traction off here whatsoever. Troy, so this is one that's in 6 months demand, but has literally come to a hair off the bottom of it. It's got a local 2-week supply there, so it has got this local new 2-week supply, but again, like, is this going to hold support here for another move up? Situation uncertain. It's already had a couple of wicks into that local zone, So it's tested here, and then it's had another big wick into there, and it's now made a 3-day demand. So something again that could pick up support here, but now it's got immediate daily supply above, so it's not something I want to long. I don't really want to long it here because I'd rather it takes out the low. Like if it was going to drop again, I would rather it took out the stops from here, and then it may just break down. So it's another one that's a little bit hard to judge for me, and I think again there was just some low time frame 3-day daily. If it does manage to get through this 2-week supply, then I expect this will probably go quite a lot higher. It likes to do big, this likes to do big wicks, big moves. So yeah, I've set an alert up here for the 3-week supply, which obviously hasn't been tested. So it's had a really significant drop and has had no test on the way. So similarly here, I had a big pump, and thus any bounce throughout hasn't held. So similarly here, we could just get a run straight back through. Alternatively, it is just going to break down and die. But we're not at that point yet for looking for the more immediate shorts with these tests going on in here. Trump, the coin that ruined the market. So all my charts on this look just bizarre because this MEXC had the previous Trump coin, and then overwrote the new Trump. So the previous Trump coin is called MAGA Trump, and the new Trump coin is called Official Trump. And then they initially had it all both on the same chart, and then they deleted the history, so I still have my lines, but I wonder if they're still valid, so I've left them in. Would have been a very nice log if you'd actually been in this. Yeah, so anyway, like I'm just in this sort of choppy downtrend. I think I put a slightly dubious because we've got this 5-day immediately closer to price, but I put a weekly supply alert here because I thought it was worth watching. No idea what it's going to do on the long side, but yeah, that's worth watching for a short. And there's a Bitmart chart which was the same, and then we have those. So this is the original perp, so the MAGA. So the price now doesn't show the pump and has obviously come a lot lower now. So like price wise, this is 0.281, whereas if we look at the original Bitmart and MEXC charts, 0.281 is down here. And that's interesting. I think that's what I was looking at that earlier. I must have got the prices a little bit mixed up. Yeah, so ironically, no, there is actually, this is where I previously had an alert, there is a demand down here at 0.290. So it is possible that this now pumps from here, but I'm not overly confident of that, and I don't know if anyone's really trading this old Trump coin, although it still exists. But yeah, you know, if you really want to get into longs, you could actually look for longs on this. This is actually in a demand at 0.281. What was it? 0.29. I don't know. It's in some sort of a weekly demand here anyway from the previous history on the charts. But whether it's really demand on the basis of the new Trump coin, I doubt it. So I'm more inclined just to look for that short that I mentioned at the start. You know, if it comes back up into this weekly supply, see if you can get a bigger short on this. I mean, at some point, I do think this is going to run. But it's just a question of at what point. And at the moment, you know, these candles aren't telling me it's going to run at this point. True. Another one, so again, it's in a bigger downtrend. I think it's come off a yearly supply at the high there. So you can see that grey line. Have the colour drawn in, but yeah, so obviously get a very nice short. So from a yearly perspective, you know, if we're coming off a yearly supply like this, the simple test of a yearly supply, I expect to take out this low. So I am bear biased on this, but again, it's at a challenging point where we're already almost at taking out those lows. It's got a monthly demand here, it's bounced off it, and now it's come deeper inside it. This one has a 2-month supply already and potentially is going to make a 3-month just above. So I've set the alert there. Apparently didn't write anything in it. 2 months, then 3-month supply. So I've set the alert there. Same as everything else, it can run higher inside. It's got an untested 3-week, it's got a 5-day. So it can certainly, and it can run up to this 5-day if it wants to, but yeah, I would look for short entries if it gets a retest there, and I would expect to take out these lows If you want to trade this more aggressively, it does have a 2-week supply here. And I am seeing some of those rejecting, even the small ones, and it's got a 5-day here. So if you want to short this, that's a possibility. Risky being it's on monthly demand and is at the start of this last up move. So I prefer to short higher at this stage rather than shorting very close. I think there's probably other things that are better to short than this, like TOMI, for example, something that's just epically going down. TRX is kind of an interesting one, actually, that actually I don't need to take my brains off. Just show the perp chart. So one of the most bullish has just been going up solidly for 2 years, but for some reason nobody ever really seems to talk about. And as always, TRX was one of the ones that I was using as my top signal quite often. So obviously it's broken out and it's just doing a very slow correction. It's just, again, a question of how much it's going to correct. So my preference for this was to look for longs on this monthly demand down here. But then there is a 2-month, there's a bit of a gap, and then there is a 2-month, so it could run through that first monthly and then go down. But my preferred entry would be on this 2-month. So I'll show you, because now the chart's so messy because there's so many zones on it. It's got a yearly demand down here, should it really drop. And then a 2-month I just talked about there. I don't think there's a 3-month, no. So it's a difficult one, because is it going to retrace this whole up move? Like if we look over here, it had a very long time, so from 2-year consolidation before this big breakout. So if this wick is signifying the end of the breakout, are we now going to get another 2-year consolidation through here? And that's entirely possible. And if that's the case, then it could well come down to the annual demand that's a lot lower inside. But on the lower time frame, so I've currently got, I need to go very much low time frame so you can see. So I've currently got an alert here. There's a 2-week demand at the top of this, and then there's a monthly. But as I've said, you've got these trendline stops here, and then this untested 2-month below. So I've just put that note in the alert that's the kind of aggressive. Just see what happens when we get there, but be conscious that this could very easily wick through the stops there because it hasn't quite tested this zone below. If we get there, as it stands, we are holding this weekly demand. So I had the original alert off that and it didn't get very high. And we're now coming back for a test of that. So it is still possible that this is going to run. It's still in a weekly uptrend. It could still make a higher high from here. I previously had an alert on a 4-hour supply up here that didn't get tested. So I have put in an alert. I was looking at this, this is a 2-week supply in here. Now it's got this 2-week above that was already tested, and now we've made a 2-week supply in there. So this could still reject lower. I don't know how long this consolidation is going to want to take. But what we did also have is an untested daily here. So I figured if we were going to come and test this weekly again, got this wick into the weekly, then we could come and take these trend line stops out, and then it's worth watching this daily or that daily, and then finally the 4-hour for the possible rejection and possible short entry. But these are higher risk shorts. So again, going back to kind of previous PA, like we had a more significant drop back in 2021, but maybe on a lower time frame. What was I looking at earlier? I think maybe it was just this, that again we've had this up move and then it just consolidates sideways, and this could just be a giant version of that. I feel like there was another version that was more similar in size, but perhaps not. Just checking my stream is still running okay. Yeah, so anyway, not something I want to short in off this local supply until I see some demand break. Because at the moment, every bounce is just in a sideways range. Really, it has gone a little bit lower in the range now, and it has had a close below those 3 wicks. So maybe this is going to fall from here, but I would prefer a short entry on daily supply up there, and a long entry if we get down to this monthly demand, being conscious of the possibility of taking out those trendline stops. TST I touched on earlier as part of the the alerts. So this is now I apparently have 2 alerts on this. Yeah, let me take that alert out. Don't know what I was thinking there. But yeah, so weekly supply in here. Is probably more viable short. I was being maybe slightly more aggressive, or maybe I had this 2-day in here from the weekend. But yeah, I just need to see what this does through here, if this is going to pick up, if it's picking up some random support, and potentially just, just above the top of this wick. Maybe it's found that as support from another exchange perhaps. But my preference on this would be to still see a drop and get a long down in here, or a more viable short on the weekly here. Already tested 5-day under the weekly. Yeah, so I said, okay, 1 week supply could run through in favour of the 1 day above this zone. Yes, okay, so it already tested the 5-day in here was my point, and then we've got a weekly above, but then given it's already tested the 5-day, given the chop through here, it is possible this runs up to the daily supply up the top if it wants to, before having a decent short. But yeah, on something like this, I think you're better off looking at starting to look at patterns and trend lines if you want to get a short entry, or a more aggressive short entry than if it doesn't get to my weekly. So see if this starts to form a trend line here, if it starts to look like it might take some stops. I mean, that wick already took some stops down into there. Else just wait for it to get to a better supply. Turbo. Another one that's kind of floating in the middle of nowhere, so I went more aggressive on the short side on this, just so to have something. This obviously has broken those lows and has made a 5-day supply at that level. Yeah, so I've said there's a 5-day supply and then there's a 2-week at the top of this. So this could run a bit higher than that 5-day, so it is quite aggressive, but given it's not on a decent demand, I think it was worth looking at a more aggressive possible short entry there. But it does run the same risk of taking out some of these trendline stops if it wants to. Failing that, there's a 3-day in here and there's a monthly above. That's about it on that. This has actually swing failed the low. It took the low by a couple of cents. However, I didn't have the alert there before, I have put a new alert in if it comes back down here, but at this point it would be mainly for the breakdown. So as I've said previously, I alert all-time lows, and we're looking either for a swing fail and then coming back up, or we're looking for a breakdown and then a retest of the level and then a drop. So I've alerted this again in case it gets that later, because I have again seen that happen on some things, like Myria, I think is an example where I had the alert. It appeared to swing fail, but then it just went up to the nearest supply and is now somewhere down here. So if this is just going to reject the most immediate supply, then it's possible you're going to get that breakdown later. And then from a short perspective, there's a 2-week supply up here, and then also the 2-month. I think the 2-month in this case wasn't quite tested, no. It was very just short of that level, tested weekly supply just below it. So yeah, I put an alert for 2-week, 2-month supplies of either of them, and then it might also have the 3-month confirm a little bit higher, and then there's a 4-day at that level. So these are again more aggressive short entries, becoming a tough one because we are at this bottom support. So is this just going to find support? Is this just the larger range? Oops. Is this just the larger range? A bit too dramatic at the end there, but is that just the larger range, and now we know we're at the bottom of the range, and now we're just going to get moved to the top of the range. 2-month supply makes that for me less likely, but we can see. TWT might have to have another coughing break. Or a cigarette, which seems utterly ridiculous when I'm sitting here coughing on stream, but the problem with smoking is when you're a smoker, actually smoking stops you coughing. So it makes it, while you seem like a fool because you're smoking and coughing all over the place, it actually, apparently I think numbs the cilia in your throat or something like that, so you actually stop coughing temporarily in the short term, but in the long term obviously it's not good for you. Okay, so TWT I think was just a complete mess. I mean, it's come back down now into this 3-month demand. Arguably it is still bullish in the higher time frame compared to a lot of stuff, but again, multiple tests on this level. If this ends up as a big swing failure, if we get some demand, okay, sure, may or may not confirm the 3-month supply. So I put the level in, but because We're quite close to it and we've still got quite a lot of time left. I haven't actually drawn it properly, I've just drawn it with a dashed line. So I've set an alert for possible shorts on this 2-week supply. I mean, to be fair, it's already been tested locally, but if we get, again, more sideways action, it's possible we get another rejection there and can give a short. Excuse me. 2-week demand down here, should we come all the way back down there? But again, this is just a messy sideways thing, so I'm not really particularly inclined to trade this. It does have a 5-day supply here, so yeah, this entry is more just looking, are we going to take some stops out here and then potentially have a move down? But yeah, it's just a sideways range, and we're kind of like a third off the bottom of the range. If we get back down here, you can look for longs. If we get back up here, you can look for shorts. And then onto the U's. So ULTI is one that's in a massive downtrend. It has, you know, a monthly supply up here. It has a lot of supplies. I've just had been shifting alerts down on this, so it keeps making supply and not testing it, or at least not testing where I've put the entry. I mean, here it did make there's a 5-day in there, it has tested, and then it's made a 3-week, but it hasn't come back up to test that. We now have a 2-week supply in here, a 3-week a bit higher. So I've alerted for the 3-week, and then I think I shifted the alert down slightly just because there's also a 5-day and a 3-day a little bit lower. So again, I'm reasonably comfortable looking for shorts if you get a rejection there, because I think this is obviously clearly in a bigger downtrend. Yes, it may have bottomed out. It is at the moment on a higher low, but yeah, I think that's fine to look for shorts there because I think it's on the bearish side. UMA, yet another one that's kind of broken the low and may or may not be a swing failure. You can start looking for longs on this if you want, or waiting for. Hasn't broken any supply yet. Potentially will make a new daily demand today. So if it does confirm this daily demand today, then it's worth looking for a long entry. On the basis that this could be a swing failure. I wouldn't be overly ambitious with your targets at this stage, but again, it's another one with just all that choppy supply all the way down, so if it does want to run through it, it could. So I've been slightly more conservative on the short. Actually put this 3-month supply, but I put the alert under 2 months. So yeah, it's looking like it is likely to confirm a 3-month supply in here. The 2 months a little bit lower. Let me move that up a bit. And then yeah, there's a 3-week inside it, so I'm looking around that area if we get a retest in there for a much bigger short. But it's obviously a potentially long time till it gets there. But yeah, this could give you a nice long entry if that does work out as a swing failure of the low. So keep an eye on that for potential longs. Uni, another one that's just a complete mess, and I'm just not sure. One thing I haven't commented on is that the bigger picture thing is, so we've got this and then we've got this correction, and I've said this in another couple of my videos, but when you have the correction, this can either be a triangle correction or a zigzag correction. So the triangle correction could be like this is the larger triangle, and then when, you know, eventually we break up from the triangle, but the other option is that it's a zigzag correction, so that's an A, B, C. So that's kind of the risk with looking for longs in here on a lot of these charts. So for now on this, you know, it is on a 3-month demand, but it's had so many tests on it that I don't love it. Yeah, and it's just a nasty messy. It's come off a 3-month supply at the high and 3-month demand at the low. It might make, so this I'd rather wait. It's another one that I'd rather wait. So it potentially is going to make a 3-month supply at this level. But I just need to see that, you know, then if it does, then I'll be significantly more bearish. Until then, you know, we are at the low of the range again, and potentially we're just about at a higher low in this potential corrective upward channel. And I haven't got the channel drawn in, so maybe let's draw that quickly. So that type of channel, or, you know, really from down here. I'm not doing it very accurately, but broadly that's what I'm looking at. So each time I move it, it's going to do different wicks, but yeah, broadly this type of channel, so we could get a bounce from here. But again, there's a, what's that, a 2-week supply midway up, so I think it was worth the more aggressive short entry on that. It would require taking some stops and going through, what's that, 4-day and 3-day supply in the middle. So again, hard to know, it's going to reject here if it wants to go to higher zones, but we just have to wait and see. You know, this potentially could still hold, but I just don't think it's overly high probability. So again, you can watch the daily time frame and see if that gives you some sort of low time frame entry to get a tight entry, and then just see what happens, like if it is going to run, because it is possible that it runs this channel and goes up here now. And it's just a question of waiting to see. So you can see at this point, you know, that this went up and then it rejected in this supply up here before coming for the lower low. So again, that's kind of what I'm looking for here, that are we going to reject in this supply or possibly a higher supply and then go for that lower low. That's kind of what I would see happening on this more than anything else. And then hopefully still holding a higher low and still holding this demand, because, you know, like I say, we could have the ABC wave that ends up breaking down entirely. USTC, so this is something that had a big annual supply, so I'm again much more short biased on this. Let me just check. So it has, yeah, tested it in here, which is where I had the last short entry, and again the expectation is that at least it takes the low of the green candle, but possibly the entire the all-time low of this, and this is, I've got something linked to Luna, doesn't it, I believe? I don't know. I've got a 3-month supply drawn in there, but I haven't actually put an alert on that as yet, but there's potentially going to be a 3-month at this level. Obviously I've been slightly more aggressive on the alert, so yeah, we've got a 3-week supply. So 3-week supply is a 3-day inside it, a little bit higher, and then a possible also 3 months. So that's the zone I'd be watching for potential shorts, either here at the 3-week level or at that 3-day, and then if the 3-monthly confirms. It's not necessarily, again, the highest probability, it is a sideways type thing, and it's similar to here, that, you know, once it's done this and it's made a higher low, then it just ran through everything. It is possible this is a higher low, but again, we're coming off that annual supply at this level. It's had a decent move off that, so it's a move I would expect off an annual supply, but also I would expect it to take out this low. The challenge being is if it wants to go higher in the annual supply before taking out that low. So I need to say a little bit more on this, but my bias remains down for the moment until I see some supply broken. Same as everything else. I think that's pretty much consistent with all of these that I've done. You know, while they are, some of them are at levels that you can potentially look for longs, very few of them, even I think Ton, which was probably the most bullish looking, hasn't broken supply. So much of this being a short video, how did it manage to come close to 2 hours, even with trying to be quick? Weekly supply on this, so I've been slightly more aggressive on the short alert on usual, because it's just sort of no demand down there. There is the risk that it's going to take the stops there, so just be conscious of that. I've got that level, that preference level, I don't know, maybe I like the 4-hour more. 4-day, sorry. Yeah, I do actually like the 4-day more. Yeah, so this could come and take the stops up into this zone, but initially look at that 2-weekly zone, no, 2-weekly zone for possible shorts. Actually, I think it's a weekly, and then there's a 2-weekly inside it. So yeah, the 2 weeks are a little bit higher, and this is weekly zone, so we can look there for shorts, and then see if then potentially maybe this will give a higher low after the rejection off there, and then maybe look to take out the trend line stops into that next entry. And then finally UXLINK, which is again just back and holding demand, and this is actually probably the first one I've seen that's more indicative of what I thought. I've commented on a few of the previous watch lists about doing a possibility of doing an inverse head and shoulders, so this again would show that. That's a possibility, and I think likely on many of the alts. So, and hence why I keep looking for short entries. So this again has significant trend line stops, so it could run through up to the higher zones, but we'll just see. And I think I put in this alert here. Yeah, I put it as 2 week supply, but possibly look for long entries as it's taken the lows, so could try and run the trend line stops above. So it took the lows out here, it has held this local demand. So it is possible now it wants to run through, it can run through all these stops. So yeah, I probably would have had a long entry there if I'd been looked at it in time. See if it creates a new daily demand there. It's a little bit higher than I'd like. But I don't know, you can watch this again for a bit more consolidation through this area. If it does that before getting up there, then you might get a decent long up there, and then it would be worth holding. Just to see what kind of reaction, and if it does run through all these stops. So I just need to see a lot of these hit, and then I can judge. And then with this, if it does drop, I'll be looking at, yeah, there's a 4-day demand down here, and then there's a monthly and a 3-week, not untested at the bottom. So this is a nice example of, well, not the best example because I haven't got the best entries, but this trying to get in long entries on a new coin just for scalps, just on the off chance it breaks out. Unfortunately, I think this was a bit painful, and I stopped looking at it. That I think I had a trend line break, and then it kind of broke, but then meandered and went sideways before this giant candle. I don't know if it would have confirmed the monthly at that point. No, it's obviously held the monthly level then on the test, but the monthly hadn't confirmed at that point. So it's also then, that shows you that it's good to have your monthly levels drawn in even if they're not confirmed yet. And this actually was only very early in September before it then confirmed it later, but it's worth watching those levels to see if they get flipped to support. Anyway, so that's all the T's and U's. I don't think there's anything overly exciting in there really. I think Tom was probably the most promising. But even that, you know, I think virtually all of these have 2 months supply, so it's just a question of where and how far above it is. So whilst TON is probably one of the more bullish charts, it's still got a 2 month supply above. So we still need to see the reaction there, and if we're going to get some consolidation, as I commented, like we did back through here, once we get to that supply, in order to then get the next move up. But I just don't see the short term or even the mid-term giving any significant moves except potentially on the newer coins. TOGE was one I liked, but again, still need that to go a little bit lower. THETA and TFUEL were worth watching because they are hitting support, but again, multiple hits on support. It's hard to know if this is going to hold and give a decent move because I'm seeing a lot of other things break down from these levels. Tau, what people are interested in, again, it was nice, but now I'm not so sure. Like, is it going to hold here? Possibly. But very tentative on entries on these, and just too much supply. So I guess overarchingly, what we're seeing so far is we haven't got new demand in most things. We haven't A, broken local supply, and B, got new demand in order to look for longs. For those that we do have local demand, certainly look for longs. You know, we've had too much of a drop on too many things now, and it's about time we retrace some of these moves. I'm a bit loath to say that because I don't like assuming that, but what I do like assuming then, or not assuming, is then at least kind of going, okay, we've had this downtrend, it keeps dropping. A lot of things I'm not showing it, but a lot of things have divergence, but we need to see supply break, new demand form, ideally 3, 4, 5 day rather than just daily, because dailies tend not to be that good, and then potentially we're going to get some decent moves up. So yes, many things are at support, possible support, and we're at like high risk point of breakdown as well, but we need to see some of that supply break and some demand hold. TLM, you know, one is an example. You know, it has made a daily demand in there, but it's right under 5 day or 3 day supply at the moment. There's a 5 day above, there's a weekly, and then a 2 weekly. Can go and run and take those trend line stops. So if you want to take a long on the basis that maybe it's going to go and take out those stops, I would suggest not on this, because I would suggest only doing that if it's in a major demand. But those are things you can start watching out for, much like over here. So we had a low, had some minor consolidation, and then went and took the stops. But then, even then, you can see it rejected just above taking the stops and then made a lower low. So, you know, even if we get these runs through here, I think everyone's going to get all excited. In the case of something like this, it's just going to go straight back up into 2-month supply and then potentially die. So I think we need to be quite careful about looking for long re-entries after, if we do get some big moves. Anyway, that's about all I wanted to say for today. Let's just see, Bitcoin really hasn't gone anywhere since I started talking. ETH is looking a little bit stronger though, but Bitcoin, it looks like it's probably just filled the gap there. Might have filled the gap finally, yes, has filled the gap. So delete that, at least the initial gap, and then we've still got the higher gap. And I think indices are probably running a little bit to support that. Yeah, so we're getting a bit of a move on indices. But we still need things to come down and test local demands. So yeah, we're finally at a decent point. The yen index is moving, Nikkei is moving quite strongly. Yeah, we've had some decent moves off the indices. Actually, better off the non-US indices than the US indices. So I need to start seeing some of these supplies tested. Like FTSE, I just had an alert come in while I was doing that stream on FTSE, because it just hit this 5-day supply. I mean, it can certainly run higher inside the supply, but you know, it's going to come off weekly demand, so this can still, weekly demand, go straight back into an uptrend if it wants to. And a nice strong close on the weekly anyway. But we need to start seeing some of these retests, like this is going to reject here and then fall back down. But yeah, the US indices is more what's relevant to crypto and Bitcoin, so that's promising for crypto that we are starting to see a bit of a bounce on the indices. So I don't know if we're going to get some better moves on Solana. Near have kind of moved, Atoms died off a bit. Yeah, so we're seeing a bit more green on some of the majors now as well, which is promising. But yeah, Bitcoin's really going to need to break out of this local range and hopefully not do an instant rejection once it hits this 5-day supply above. Similarly, we're going to need Ether BTC. So probably Ether BTC is going to be the more critical one for the alt market. It's looking slightly better now than when I started the stream, but we're looking for this close to give us a daily demand, which we then hold on a retest, and then Ether could have a decent run because it does now have space to the next supply. I'm just going to hope we don't get something like this where we just meander around sideways before another bigger drop. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for today. We're coming up to 2 hours, which is way longer as usual than I wanted to be. Any questions, please let me know in Telegram. Please like and subscribe if you're interested and want to see more. Please feel free to put any requests in Telegram or in comments to the video if you've got any requests of what you want to see, or if you want particular alts charted. Obviously now I am getting finally to the end of my alphabet, so hopefully I'll be able to do V, W, X and Z in the next couple of days. I don't know if there's going to be too many to do it all in one go or not. I'll have to run through them and see. Then finally I can actually get to properly looking at more what's interesting on a particular day or in a particular week, rather than just doing every random coin. But once I've got all my alerts set, then I'm sorted. So that's pretty good. And yeah, so what I'll do then is do streams just going through the alerts each day, I think, like as the alerts are coming through and how you may or may not trade them. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed, and let me know if you have any questions. Have a good evening.